For me personally, it's the AK just because I just know it inside and out. I know if and when it breaks, I know how to fix it. I have all the parts and everything like that I would ever need for it. For the average person though, I would say probably the AR-15. In 2025, AKs are more accurate than you think, and ARs are more reliable than you think. I've seen people take AKs in 7.62 by 39 and make reliable hits at 500 yards with iron sights. And I can manufacture things like suppressors, machine guns, SBRs, SBSs. The intent of everybody in the government. They will go in there and they would look for clerical errors and they would use that as an excuse to shut down your business. One of the things that got me motivated on top of that was my congressman at the time, Tony Gonzalez. I thought that was absolutely absurd that a Texas Republican, a supposed conservative, would vote for Biden's gun control.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, open up your hearts and your pocketbooks and welcome Brandon Herrera, the AK guy that is followed by millions of people on YouTube. This guy is a Second Amendment monolith, and he has probably one of the coolest gun collections of anybody in the United States, which is saying a lot. So we're going to talk about guns. We're going to talk about politics. We're going to talk about growing up in the South, and we're going to have a lot of fun doing it. Thanks for joining us today, Brandon.
It's a hell of an intro, brother. I appreciate it, man. And I appreciate you having me on.
You're only 29 years old, and you have done quite a bit of living already. From growing a career, entertainment is probably the most difficult place to build a career. And you've done that successfully. You've already ran for Congress and almost got in by 400 votes. And I know you're running again. But it sounds like you, when God turned you loose on the world 29 years ago, that you have been hitting the pavement hard. And my question is, what motivates you?
Well, it's like the Indiana Jones. I think it's the quote from that movie. It's not the years, honey, it's the miles. And that was something I grew up from. I had an entrepreneur background. Both of my parents were entrepreneurs, and growing up around that, I got to watch them go from a 1-bedroom apartment, working multiple fast food jobs and stuff like that, to growing a business and succeeding at it. And because they were in the real estate business, then 2008 came around and they lost everything. And then I was right around the perfect age to then be paying attention because I watched them build it back. And that was something that, it just goes to show that this stuff isn't an accident. You just have to work your ass off and be willing to put in the time and work smart. And that was just a really big inspiration for me growing up. And that I'm watching them do all these great things, coming from nothing. I'm like, man, what's my excuse? And so, it started in the gun space.
They can't measure desire. They can't. They can measure your height. They can measure your IQ. But I had a really successful person tell me one time that if you're kind of smart, you don't have to be the smartest guy, and you outwork the smartest guys, you're going to win and you'll beat them every time. The guy that works the hardest. And I can really relate to your story, man, because I grew up first in trailers, and my dad, he was a funeral director for a minute, and he was driving trucks, and he started his own business, and I got to watch him pull us out. So I can sympathize with that a lot. And so what was the first business you started?
Oh man. Well, I started technically, it depends on how far back you want to go. When I was like 14, 15, me and my dad would flip auction cars, like the sheriff, like DUI auction, stuff like that. We'd find like the Kelly Blue Book value to all the cars out there, like look to see what we would pay for something or what we were interested in, and then fix it up and sell it on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace. I think that came around a little bit later. But that's what I did with basically I just would mow grass for money, and then use that money to then buy a car to flip, and then use that for more money and kind of watch that grow. And of course, I was an idiot kid, so I didn't do anything productive with the money. Spent it on a bunch of stuff I didn't need that didn't help me in any way, shape, or form. But that kind of got me started in understanding that. And man, I had a lot of businesses a lot of which failed.
Oh
stuff
yeah, yeah,
specifically
I've
like
had
the
some of those.
industry.
We don't, you, that's where you learn what not to do again. But what got you, what created your adoration for weapons?
I've always just kind of been in that. I had that was my obsession, I guess, and it's hard to pin it down to one thing: movies, video games, what have you. But man, I was building guns in my garage at 16. Like I was always just obsessed with, especially just AKs. Obviously, is kind of my thing, but Russian weapon systems and surplus, and it's just so cool, man. Because now, the way I think about it, and it took me a while to, I guess, figure out like why the draw. It's because all the new stuff, like a Glock or an AR-15 or something like that, it just, it got CNC'd yesterday. There's no story to it. There's no history. The surplus stuff, like World War II stuff or the old Soviet stuff and whatnot, man, that some of the guns I have in my shop, were made in Romania, were fielded in the Yugoslav wars where they got cut up in this country and then, went here, 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 and then years and years, just decades of story, and then it ends up in my hands. Like, I think there's something cool about that.
Absolutely. So I have a friend of mine that I've been in business with for a long time. He's one of my business partners, and he's Japanese, and but he's got like this. He's from Arkansas. He's got this hillbilly draw. But when he made his first lick, he wanted to go back to Japan, and he has a thing for buying the antiquities in the form of the katanas, and so. Going back, I forget how far. It's like 600-700 years or something. They know the sword maker that made them, and then they know the battles that the weapon was in, and the marks on the sword. Some of them they can tell you who his opponent was and who he killed. And you think about like some of these guns. Imagine what those guns saw. You talk about being a fly on the wall. What if you were a camera in the weapon sights, going through some of those guns? Man, it's a really cool thing. But so you got like people like Jay Leno that are so crazy into cars. And that it could be a soapbox derby car, and he would get excited about it. You kind of have a similar enthusiasm about guns, and like guns lift your kind of lift your vibe, and you have so much enthusiasm around it. And I think that that's one of the things that attracts people to your page is that there's a sincere good time that you're having when you are telling people about these weapons.
It's definitely there's a passion there, and I won't claim to know more than I have people who work for me that know more about some of the stuff than I do. But it's just it has genuinely been a passion for a long time. Like I remember we filmed a video, it had to be last year, where it was the RPG. I think we were talking about this a little bit, but firing the RPG at a ballistic dummy torso and whatnot. And finally, but did the first time ever pulling that trigger, something I'd never done before. And I've been doing this for a long time now, and over 10 years I've been doing this stuff in particular. And there's not a lot of firsts for me anymore.
Yeah.
But firing that RPG, I remember walking away and showing my camera guy, like,
oh yeah,
the adrenaline had got me. I was like, man, that I haven't felt that for a gun in a long time. That's really cool that there's still stuff like that out there. There's still stuff you haven't done.
Yeah. So what brought you to the YouTube channel?
I'd always kind of had a passion for making stuff, I guess, making videos and whatnot. I used to do that. I had multiple YouTube channels before I even turned 18, just goofing around with my friends, and like, I always liked movies and stuff and wanted to kind of get into that world some. But originally the YouTube channel I currently have, I was in college at the time, and I was just bored as hell in like an environmental science class. I remember.
Oh, those are great. When you learn about acid rain and how it was going to destroy, and like they were going to lose all the topsoil. According to the environmental science books, we've been extinct for at least 50 years.
It's weird. None of the predictions that he made ever came true. It's kind of crazy. But I just remember being bored out of my mind and just like, you know what, I'm going to post some videos because I had just, shot a couple machine guns with a friend. And I was like, I'll need a place to put those videos. Whatever, I'll just start a YouTube channel. And at the time that I needed a name for it. And I'm like, well, all my friends know I'm obsessed with AKs. They all call me the AK guy. Like, oh yeah, What's this Romanian Wasser 10 worth? I don't know. Ask the AK guy. And so like I'm like, all right. So I just used that as like a throwaway. I wasn't trying to create a brand or anything, but I'll be damned if it didn't stick.
While we're on the AK topic, what is, if it came down to it, a post-apocalyptic world, what's the one AK a person should have? Who made the best one?
So a lot of people say Russia, but Bulgaria is like right there. It's even been said that Mikhail Kalashnikov like blessed the Bulgarian factory, saying that like these are some of the best AKs in the world.
Yeah.
So those are good stuff. In the United States, as much as it's blasphemy to say in the AK world, I think 5.56 AKs are probably your best bet because it's just such a widely used cartridge here in the US. If we're talking post-apocalyptic. Now, if it didn't matter, I'd just say an AK 105 because it's got a soft spot in my heart. I just think it's one of the coolest guns ever made.
So, Mikhail Kalashnikov, people might not know this. So when we talk about what a durable good is, a durable good could be a refrigerator, a washer, and a dryer, but it can also be a gun. So Mikhail Kalashnikov was the inventor of the AK 47, and it is the most produced durable good in the history of the world. So if you think about the impact that guy's invention had, that gun controlled where political borders were in countries. That gun controlled influence around the world, and that gun made to where people like the Vietnamese, who were far outgunned in forms of advancement as their opponents, but it created equal footing around the world for very common people. And there's probably very few people talk about inventions that had an impact on the world. There's very few that had a similar impact as the AK.
Oh yeah, and I mean you're talking about open source power now. Because you have all these cultures that, countries across the world that maybe all they had was bolt action rifles still. And now you have China producing 100 million Kalashnikov variants, not an exaggeration, and just pumping them all over the place. You still see them all over the world, like Norinco Chinese AKs. And they just work. They're easy to use. They're easy to understand. And they're just cheap to produce. If you're like talking about industrial manufacturing capacity, once they got to the AKM in the 50s, which is the stamped variant, it's the AK everybody thinks of when they think of AK-47. That made it so cheap to produce that, I mean, you had countries, Russia was making them, Bulgaria was making them, China was making them, Romania, Yugoslavia, now Serbia. Everybody was cranking them out. Egypt was making them, like just all over the world.
Was the SKS a bastardized descendant of the AK-47?
Believe it or not, it came first.
Wow.
So the SKS was created by Simonov, right about World War II, tail end of World War II. And funny enough, it was actually a scaled down version of the PTRS 41 anti-tank rifle. So he made an anti-tank rifle and was like, this is pretty nifty. I wonder if I scaled this down, could I turn it into an assault rifle? And that's where the SKS came out.
Yeah. So little background and my personal interlude with the SKS. So my father, I was raised in a gun culture. From the time I was 9, I slept next to guns. My dad, we would do farm work as teenagers in Missouri. I'm from Missouri, grew up the second part of my childhood in Texas. My father was deeded the farm by his grandmother, and so we'd have to go to farm work. She had gotten old, and it kind of became like looking at the salvage yards in Mexico. People would pay to dump trash on her, and we would go dig out metal and stuff out of the ground, and then we would work fences as teenagers. And my dad would pay my brother and I in bullets, and we thought we were robbing the poor bastard. But my dad is a really he's a pretty wild guy. My dad has copyrighted the term yeehaw. My dad, he has like his own little design thing that he just wanted to copyright yeehaw. And so he made up t-shirts and hats, and then and he owns that. And so to give you an idea of of his mentality. So when I was 11 years old, we got Glock pistols for Christmas, and we ran out of the farmhouse on Christmas morning, shooting out of the back door like drunk Indians. But we got a bunch of SKSs. You could buy an SKS for $90 in 1993, and you could get 1,000 rounds of ammo for $90. So for under $200, you got a gun and 1,000 rounds. And so my dad took all the neighborhood kids in Texas to help do farm work. And I remember one deer season, my dad just gave all the teenagers, everybody had an SKS. And we were out like performing our little sorties out in the woods during deer season. He all had his deer license, and everybody got their first deer with an SKS. And it was wild because opening day in Missouri is like a Civil War reenactment, because it's a 10-day season and all the neighbors, the poachers, are out there. And so the deer just run around like from one spot to another. And we shot most of those deer while we were running and they were running, and we were on foot. But
oh my God.
Yeah, that was with the SKS and FMJs.
It's funny though. Your father essentially armed a small third world militia in the middle of Missouri.
Yeah. And I can tell you what we love the guy. And to this day, I'll still talk to kids from the old neighborhood that are adults now. And they'll say, "Do you remember when your dad gave us all those semi-autos?" They think they're AKs. They said, "We went out there and blasted those deer." I was like, "Yes, man, that's one of those moments that leave an impression on you." So, what of all besides the AK, what are some other guns that inspire you?
And there's so many. Because so for me, it's neat to see the etymology, I guess is the word, the evolution of the firearm. And that's why I love the historic stuff, because you can see, I don't know, it's the principle that there's nothing new under the sun. And you could just see the evolution and where like, oh, you stole that from this, you stole this part from that. And then like you look at like the MG42, for example, the German light machine gun during World War II. The thing that they're shooting in Saving Private Ryan, when the Americans are coming out of the boats and everything. That gun, the tray, like the top cover, belt advancement mechanism and everything, it was the inspiration for like everything that came after it. The M249 saw, the M60, like the Americans just saw that and they're like, that works. We're taking it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you just see all those little things. So like the MG42 is one of them. The STG-44, one of the first assault rifles. That's really cool. We've got one of those. Rebuilding right now an MP18, which I believe was from the same guy, Schmeisser. I might be wrong on that, but it was one of the first widely produced submachine guns ever. It was at the very tail end of World War I. And like you see those things that, they figured it out, like on an open bolt submachine gun. It's just a round tube with a steel bolt. It's just a steel cylinder in it with a firing pin. It's simple and it works. And that was the pinnacle of submachine gun technology for like 50 years before like the MP5 rolled around.
Well, the design on Crocodile is pretty simple too, but it works, so.
And they haven't changed that.
They haven't changed that. Yeah, it's endured the test of time. So as you go through gun history and we talk about now, where we're at, if people were to have that one weapon, would you? If you're going to have one weapon in post-apocalypse, modern weapon, is it the AK that we talked about, or you get down into this, and this is where you're going to make friends or make enemies? Are you if it was you, is it the AR platform or the AK platform?
For me personally, it's the AK, just because I just know it inside and out. I know if and when it breaks, because every tool does. I know how to fix it. I have all the parts and everything like that I would ever need for it. For the average person, though, I would say probably the AR-15. There's the age-old thing like, oh, well, the AR is more accurate and the AK is more reliable. In 2025, AKs are more accurate than you think, and ARs are more reliable than you think. And just in the United States, again, like the availability of 5.56 and AR-15 parts, I would probably say that's it.
The AK was known to be a gun that was usable or maximum effective range of around 300 meters. And so at that, and I think at the time that the original M16s came out. I think they pushed theirs to maybe 500 meters or something like this. So now what, like on a modernized AK, what's the maximum effective range on it?
Largely depends on the caliber. I've seen people take AKs in 7.62 by 39 and make reliable hits on man-sized steel silhouettes at 500 yards with iron sights. It's doable. You just need, like, I mean, you can get an AK pretty accurate. 2 MOA is like really not all that hard for an AK. So if you're, it can be done. But if you're moving to something like 5.56, or even like there's some 308 AKs and stuff like that. We built one in 6.5 Creedmoor a while back. That you can get a little ridiculous. Like you could take that out to 1,000 yards pretty easy.
Oh wow, yeah, right on. So you came along at a time when people like myself, many gun owners, many people that are deemed conservative, whether we're exactly conservative or not, were being targeted by the government. There was, I was arrested for protesting on January 6th. There was a lot of people don't know this. A lot of gun owners and gun dealers were arrested by the ATF, and many of them ended up getting off, but their lives were destroyed. There was, I think, hundreds of gun dealers that were that lost their license and their ability to conduct business permanently, just because what they would do is they would go back through your paperwork for 7 years, and you'd have to maintain all these records, and they would find where one of the persons that bought the gun on their forms maybe put a number wrong on their address, or some these simple mistakes, and then a guy lost his livelihood. And in that time, a couple of years ago, you ran for Congress when we were all kind of in the belly of the beast of the government. Did that was that a motivator for you as you ran for Congress the first time?
It was definitely one of them, because having an FFL, so like the licensing that I have a 0702 FFL with SOT. So basically that means I'm a manufacturer. I can manufacture things like suppressors, machine guns, SBRs, SBSs. That was basically ground zero to a lot of the stuff that the government targeting of the firearms industry. And what you're referring to is the Biden era zero tolerance policy. So they would just look for any little thing, which is, the ATF's job's supposed to be, at least like this is, if you got a good rep and everything like that, they're trying to help you and they're trying to guide you as to how to stay within the guidelines of the law, and how, to make the paperwork as easy and, as clear as possible. But that's obviously not the intent of everybody in the government. And especially when it's weaponized by somebody like the Biden administration, they will go in there and they would look for clerical errors, literally like an I that wasn't dotted and a T not crossed. And they would use that as an excuse to shut down your business. I mean, there were mom and pops that were in business for 20, 30 years, and they were instantly shut down, not because they were, hucking guns to the cartel out the back of the shop, which is the point of, a regulatory agency like that is, are you following the law? Are you, feeding guns to gangs or whatever? That's not what they were doing. They were just using the bureaucracy to do backdoor, essentially gun bans, or just basically try to put the thumb of government down on the firearm industry as much as possible. And unfortunately, they were pretty successful in a lot of ways. But one of the things that got me motivated on top of that was my congressman at the time, Tony Gonzalez, still my congressman for now. He, instead of helping the gun community and the gun industry during this, he in fact voted for the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, which he was one of the few turncoat Republicans that voted it was a Biden gun control push. And I thought that was absolutely absurd that a Texas Republican, a supposed conservative, would vote for Biden's gun control.
What's interesting is it's not very common that a person is censured by their own party in Congress. They're very reluctant to do it, and people can get away with murder and not get censored. But some of the more famous names would be Elizabeth Cheney, Adam Kinzinger, but Tony Gonzalez was also censured for voting the way that you just mentioned and voting for the same-sex marriage bill. My life was affected by what Adam Kinzinger and Elizabeth Cheney did, because they were kind of figureheads of this false committee, the January 6th committee, and they selectively broadcasted evidence into every home in DC and polluted the jury pool to where you could not get a fair jury. And so as a consequence of that, I had to go before an Obama appointed judge and was found guilty on a felony, 10 other charges. And the judges were mentioning evidence, which they're not supposed to do their own investigation for evidence brought by the January 6th committee. And so you had these quote Republicans that were doing things like this. And now Kinzinger and Cheney were thrown out of the party, right? The voters did this. But Gonzalez ended up receiving money after being censured from the super PACs, the Republican super PACs, and they backed the guy. We got a case like this, and I think the only remedy when something like that happens is you got to get the people, the grassroots people, to be aware of what's transpired. And what's kind of unique about your district is you probably have one of the largest Catholic constituencies in the country, and their rep voted for same-sex marriage, which, whether even there, what you call in that part of the world, what you call a liberal voter, is still a Catholic guy that's against that. So how do we get change? How do we get change in these situations where these guys that vote against their constituency are still getting money from the establishment?
I mean, it's definitely multifaceted. There's a lot of things to it, because the grassroots is, you nailed it. Like, grassroots is how you win stuff like this, because the establishment is unfortunately going to back the establishment guy, the party guy. It doesn't matter what he's done in his personal life, doesn't matter the votes that he's made that are against what his constituents want. They're always going to support the guy that they know is an easy vote. So the way you beat that is, again, grassroots activism, getting the people. I mean, a lot of the people out in West Texas, they're so passionate about this stuff because they pay attention and they listen to their community leaders who are, their local GOP chairs and things like that, who it's their job to pay attention. And anybody who pays attention, anybody who's an actual conservative who pays attention to the votes of Tony Gonzalez, knows what he is and knows he's got to go. And there are some people that are very, very passionate about that here in the district. I would like to say it's because, that I've rallied a lot of support, but I just know that I'm the guy that I'm getting that support from a lot of these people because they just need Tony gone. We're desperate for anyone who can lead that charge. Because if we don't, we are going to have another 6, 8, 10 years of him being involved in Republican Party politics here in Texas. And that's just not something we can do.
Yeah, I'll give you a minute to make your case on why you should be the rep and why you're better than your opponent. But before I do that, besides the gun thing, what are the other policy initiatives? What are your other parts of your platform that you're running on?
One of the biggest ones is, and that's crucial here for the district, is District 23 has more border frontage with Mexico than any district in the country. It's massive, and it's a very significant portion of the entire American border with Mexico. And that was one of the other votes that really struck me as odd that Tony had made, is that Chip, he actually made a vote to kill Chip Roy's border bill. He said that it was too aggressive against illegals. He said it was that border policy was anti-American and not Christian. because it was too harsh on illegals. And that doesn't seem like the kind of representation I want, especially in a district that is, thankfully it's better now, but it was ravaged by the border crisis during the Biden administration. So we need somebody who's going to go up there, who's going to support our constitutional rights, because that was not Tony. He made votes against the Second Amendment. He made votes against the Fourth Amendment with warrantless FISA spying. In fact, that's the reason it passed. He was the deciding vote on that. I just feel like we need more leadership that actually respects the Constitution, and on top of that, has a background. Like, I have multiple businesses. I know how to keep something in the black because I had to, or else everybody who worked for me got fired and I didn't eat. So like, I feel like I appreciate Trump's leadership in that way, where he's actually running the country like a business. But we just need more people there. Not people who've worked for the government their entire lives. We have enough bureaucrats. We need people who know how to run things in the free market and know how to succeed. And I've already reached that success before they go into Congress. Because there's plenty of people that are now successful, weirdly, on like $130,000 or whatever it is per year salary. After 4 years, now they're worth $32 million. I've never been really good at math, but I can do that math pretty quick, and that just doesn't add up.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things they do is that it pays to stay on the team, and from multiple ways. You see these guys that they're a senator and they write a book that no one reads, and it gets put on the New York Times bestseller list. And what happens is, if you're a defense contractor or you need that vote, you're an insurance company, hey, we bought 25,000 copies of that book. There's lots of ways for them to get money into the pocket of the vote they want to buy. And I'm
sure Lockheed has an entire warehouse dedicated to books they've never read.
Yeah, they got the Library of Alexander, the no one Alexandria that no one's read a page out of. So then you got like the stock picks. And one of the things that I think is interesting about people with money is that they're a lot more difficult to corrupt, because if you've earned your own wealth, it allows you to maintain dignity that those people have sold to get theirs. And so I want representation from all parts of society, but I want representation from people that are less corruptible. And I think
Absolutely.
that'll really, really help increase the integrity of Congress.
Yeah, it's like I've already made my, I'm not going to say I'm rich by any means, but I'll never have to worry about where rent comes from again. I've got multiple revenue streams. I do pretty well. And I've put a lot of my own money into the campaign. But the point is that it's like you're less corruptible, and I think you're less susceptible to it if you've already succeeded independently. I have my dream job, right? I don't need this. I'll be taking a dramatic pay cut, and in fact, I already made the pledge that while in office, I'm not going to buy, sell, or trade a single stock. I don't need it. That's not why I'm there. I'm down for banning the stock trading from, it's that the old saying that, the referee doesn't get to bet on the game. I feel like that should apply to Congress as well. But I'm clearly not here for the money. I have enough. If I leave office and everything, go back to running companies and things like that, yeah, sure, I'm going to try to make as much money as I can, because that's the game of capitalism. But while in office, I think it's about public service, and I think we need more people who think that way, where it's not to advance your career or how high up the ladder can you go. We need less politicians and more statesmen, people who've actually succeeded in the real world, and this is their way of serving their country.